Welcome back to the Black Blockchain Summit 2023. We have a great panel. My name is Bob Ponce, and I'm pleased to have four guests here. Three guests? Four guests. Sometimes I lose count. We have four great guests who are going to help us explore the topic. Is the SEC hampering the development of crypto? So I want to start by introducing them one by one. First of all, we have Rasan Boykin. He is the general counsel of Hashflow. Hashflow's tagline is trade any asset on any chain, anywhere. What is it? Did I get it right?
Anywhere, everywhere, all the time.
Right. Good, good. So you guys are definitely about innovation. We have Tiffany J. Smith, who is a partner and co-lead of the blockchain and crypto working group at WilmerHale. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you for having me.
We have Joel Braithwaite, Esquire from Braithwaite Legal, and he is a legal thinker, litigator, innovator, disruptor. He's here to give us his point of view. He's helped startups in difficult areas such as crypto and cannabis. Welcome, Joel.
Welcome all.
And last but not least, we have Eduardo Jackson. He is the CEO and co-founder of Cinema Draft. He is a person with a keen mind and opinion about all things crypto, and we always love hearing his opinion. Welcome, Eduardo.
Thanks for having me, even though I don't have a law degree, but I did get an A in business law in grad school. So
okay, and he hasn't been arrested, so there you go.
That you know. No.
that I know. So let's throw the basic question out. We've seen the SEC from the beginning days of crypto to now, and the basic premise of the question is: does the SEC hamper the development of crypto? So I want to throw it open. Anybody who wants to jump in with the first comment on that, please feel free to do so.
I mean, I'll jump in, but I mean, y'all may have to stop me because I could fill the 25 minutes alone on how annoyed I am with the SEC, namely Gary Gensler. I deal every day with people around the world, and to a degree, we're a bit of a joke in the United States because we have no clear policy with crypto, mostly because of the jurisdictional confusion, mostly perpetrated by the SEC. Trying to claim that everything that even touches crypto is some sort of security if it's not Bitcoin, and it really does hamper development not only in just Bitcoin and blockchain development, businesses, venture capital, equity, all that sort of stuff that startups like myself, founders need in order to access capital and move efficiently throughout the system. It's not happening here in the United States. We are very much behind. All that business development innovation is flowing to Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong, you name it, it's not here.
All right. Tiffany, your thoughts?
So I agree with everything Eduardo said. I think, the real issue is, even though objectively the S trying to hamper crypto, that's what the result is. So from their perspective, and we have this result based on how our financial system is structured. We have a bunch of different regulators. If you look at other jurisdictions, just have one federal regulator, then it would be a lot easier. But here in the US, we have different federal regulators who regulate different things. We keep coming up against this question as to whether or not crypto asset is a security. And so by them taking the position that most crypto assets are securities, and because there isn't a regulatory structure for entities and crypto entities to be licensed, what they're effectively doing is shutting down crypto and hampering its growth. But from the SEC's perspective, I would say that's not necessarily their objective, but it's a result of a number of different consequences in how our structure is. And it really goes to the point that we need congressional intervention so that we actually have a path. Because usually what happens if the SEC brings an action and says you're not properly registered, there is a path to register. Here, there is no path, there is no framework. So by them bringing enforcement actions against a company or individual, they're effectively shutting it down.
And
Joel,
this
your thought.
regulation oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Joel. Like I said, I'm very passionate on this topic.
Okay.
Well, I would say it's Congress. The United States Congress is who's failing here. The Congress has failed to pass laws time and time again. SEC, CFTC has tried to get guidance on the policy side from Congress. Congress, because it's ineffectual, has not been able to come together and create the type of legislative framework that's required to give the SEC or the CFTC or both the impetus to move forward in regulating. I'm reading the Coinbase filings. I'm reading the Ripple filings. Everyone's talking about they go into these agencies trying to work with them, and the agencies either don't have the authority, recognize they don't have the authority, and now they turn around and sue them without giving a real opportunity for the legislative process to take place to give them actual jurisdiction. I'm probably one of the only people that tell you that crypto can be a commodity, and I'm not sure. Well, most of the cryptos I've encountered, especially through ICOs, have been securities, but it can be a commodity. If you look at the definition created in 1936 for a commodity in particular, it has probably 15, 16 commas in the definition. That means they have enumerated everything that they wanted to be a commodity and everything they did not want to be a commodity. But unfortunately, some Bitcoin people with the derivatives went and put themselves squarely into that box. So again, it's kind of interesting, but I think it's a lack of congressional oversight and action. It's to blame for the executive government, executive people not being able to function properly. And as a result, these, heavy-handed enforcement action.
So if crypto isn't a commodity, Joel, and you think it is security, and we're basing these on 90-year-old laws, I guess where's the room for digital structures? Because obviously when they created these laws in the 1930s and what have you, they probably couldn't even imagine the lifestyle and technology we have today. So if crypto isn't a commodity, which I believe it tends to be, at least under the current structure we have, to be better regulated under, then how is it a security either when it doesn't neatly fit into that box either?
Well, interesting enough, you asked me, and I read the SEC versus Ripple opinion from the judge out in the Southern District of New York, and I've also read Coinbase's answer to the SEC's enforcement action, I think also in federal court. And what I see in those discussions from the court, you see very clearly that they didn't really say Ether. They say Ether is not a security now. They didn't say Ether was never a security, right? Bitcoin's a little bit different, right? But let's talk about XRP. XRP, they attempted to create a Bitcoin type blockchain, right? They set the cap at 100 billion XRP. They had 80 billion XRP reserved for doing other things, and then they paid people with around 200 million in XRP. And what the court did, the court looked at, well, if it's a security, it becomes a security in the investment contract. If you are saying as the promoter that I'm going to bring you more money in the future, and the court looked at it for institutional clients for Ripple, that the institutional clients have lockup agreements, so they couldn't sell, they couldn't alienate, right? So if I give you a product and I tell you you can't use it and you can't sell it, but you're going to hold on to it, and in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years, you'll be very rich. That's a security, and that's how Ripple functioned in the hand of institutional investors.
Yeah, I'll just add before like Ripple, like that's, so it's not, I think you mentioned it was clear. It's not clear, right? And Ripple is going to be the SEC has already announced their intention to appeal that. But I think going back to like, and as the regulatory securities person, the technically a commodities is very broad. It includes everything. It includes everything, including securities. But I think when you're talking about Ripple, it's important to distinguish that they did not say XRP was a security. They talked about the investment contract. So you can make an investment contract out of anything. So we're talking about oranges that were subject of an investment contract. But all of this debate, I think, goes, Bob, to the point about this, that this is very like, we're having all of these discussions about how to categorize what assets are. And we're having these discussions because they go to whether the SEC or some other regulator has the ability to regulate them. But I think, and that's a function of the fact that we have all these different regulators. We're asking the wrong question. It shouldn't be that once we categorize an asset, then it has the registration requirements and then investors are protected. It should be that like we understand that this particular asset is different than other assets we have structures for, and we should create a structure to be able to register it so that investors are protected. Because all of this debate that we're having about how to categorize it, it's just not efficient, it's not effective, and it actually hurts investors in the long run, especially people of color, bring it to the point of this, who are like creators and who finally have like a seat at the table because of all of the benefits that decentralized finance provides.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead,
So, Bob,
Rasan.
let me jump in there. So
Yeah.
again, I want to echo what Tiffany just said. What you're seeing right here is the exact problem, right? Because people like Eduardo, who are what I would consider to be entrepreneurs and the people who are on the front line starting businesses, they don't have the guidance. They don't have a pathway, as Tiffany was saying, in order to follow, in order to achieve what they want to achieve. And the debate between whether it's a commodity or whether it's security, all of that to me is just nonsense. It's us trying to fit a round peg into a square hole. And lawyers spend a lot of time trying to do that because, as Joel was saying, Congress hasn't given them a framework yet. So I actually in law school worked for the SEC. They have a hard job. It's not easy what they do. They protect, their job is to protect investors from what I call, criminals. That's what they're supposed to do, right? So, and I've been in crypto long enough. Not everyone is a good actor. Not everyone's a bad actor. Like there are criminals, and there are good people too. But that's their job, right? The big failing here, in my opinion, is that kind of like Joel is saying, Congress hasn't taken the initiative to actually develop a framework that we can actually grow the market so that we can have these new innovations and goods and services like the way MICA did in Europe. There's a bunch of jurisdictions in Asia that are working on it. That's the real problem. So, and I just want to take one quick second. This might get a little bit in the weeds, but it's a legal panel, so I'm going in the weeds. There's a difference between administrative law and statutory law, right? Statutory law just means the laws that are on the books that Congress passes, and there's administrative law that the administrative agencies, implement. Does the SEC have leeway to dictate policy, for how crypto is going to function in the United States? Sure, it could, but it's not the correct entity to do that, and it's within their discretion. So when you change, I'm sorry, Tiffany knows this off the top of her head probably, but commissioners, whatever his title is, whatever Gary's title is,
Yeah, chair of the SEC.
Yeah. When you change chairs, if you rely on administrative law like that, well, you're going to have a switch. That's why it's better for all the lawmakers to get together and develop a framework so that we're not having this discussion about whether something's a commodity as determined in 1934 or whether or not it's a security as determined by the Orange case in Howey. Like, we shouldn't be talking about any of that. We should be focused on what we're going to do today, the way the other jurisdictions are focused on that, so we can lead the way forward instead of trailing behind, which is what we're doing right now.
Are you advocating for progressive America?
That's an oxymoron, I think. What about Coinbase? Now, Coinbase always was trying to be pro compliance from day one, and yet here they are now in the crosshairs. How did that happen?
Same reason. It's the same reason. You're trying to comply with somebody who doesn't really want you to comply yet. And how I know they don't want you to comply? Because they haven't told us the rules. So,
and also they can agree with their own selves. The head of the SEC, Gary Gensler, 6 years ago, and why everyone's seen this video, I'm sure, he's on camera saying 75% of crypto are not securities. And then, there are tinfoil hatters out there who think, because he didn't get his job at Binance, he's got out for crypto. I don't know. I can't say that for sure. But now, fast forward 4 years in front of Congress, he says, we don't have the power to regulate this. It can only come from Congress. And then now, fast forward 2 years later to now, and he's out here, slapping people with the security brush and basically making smaller exchanges and companies knuckle under and pay fines because they don't want to go through this, chasing out Bittrex, shaking down Kraken. I mean, but Coinbase used the Walmart of crypto, I like to call it, in this country. They're like, no, we're gonna fight. And XRP, yeah, we'll blow 200 million because we're sitting on possibly 200 billion. So yeah, we're gonna fight. But if you're not big enough to fight that fight, then you'll just get steamrolled over a guy who's trying to, for whatever his reasons, and I have my own opinions, but for whatever his reasons, is trying to stifle the innovation that the rest of the world sees from crypto right now. And that directly hurts people like me who's just trying to innovate. I mean, because of the lack of clarity, I'm talking to a lawyer in Nigeria to help me possibly have to re-domicile out of the States just because one of my 7 revenue streams is crypto related, and I don't want to get hit with the naughty stick. What are we doing here?
Well, you raise a fair point. And the point that we all kind of ignoring is, how is the black coins fared in all of this? Coins with explicitly black founders that we know, and we see the copycats come along. They go to market, they raise a lot of money, and the black coins that have been somewhat legacy they still persist in the market, but they don't have that same level of success like a new promise, new white paper ICO type thing comes along, and it's all the rage, and soon it's on Coinbase, right? And can the black companies really compete in this market?
It's, to me, I've always had a problem with some of the rules that were put in place in order to protect minorities and socioeconomically depressed people, and the effect they actually had. Again, similar to what Tiffany was saying, the actual effect those rules had versus the intended effect. One rule that constantly comes to my mind is the accredited investor rule. To me, I don't know how people are supposed to get rich and change their economic status if they're not allowed to take risk. I just don't see it. And they're trying hard. Again, the SEC has a hard job though. People throw them under the bus too quickly. They do a lot of good work, right? And then there's a lot of smart lawyers over there. And I'm sure the intent at the time probably was good. But if there's a balance between, allowing people to get educated and take risk and allowing people to fail. Because if you don't allow people to fail, you're not giving them the chance to actually succeed. And there are a bunch of rules like that. I mean, the crowdfunding rules are kind of touched on this as well. There's a bunch of rules like that. So I would say to this audience, you really should talk to your local representative and get them moving on this topic, because I can tell you that I am not ashamed to say that I'm a liberal and a Democrat. I'm not ashamed of that, even in crypto, which is, that can be a little bit taboo. And what I've noticed is that the Democrats are getting a bad rap in this area as being anti-technology, anti-crypto. And I don't know if that's fair. So, if you want to do something about it, if you want to help change the rules, talk to your local representative and tell them that you would like them to get educated on this topic, not just talk about it, but get educated on it so they can know what they're talking about and advocate for our interests.
Now, what's going on with ETFs? It seems like there's a buzz. They're going to do it first quarter of 24, but they haven't done it, and they're looking at it. And what's going on there, and should we care?
Well, I think ETFs are important because that's about the great hope and dream was that Bitcoin was going to make it to the market and you could just buy these ETFs and you ain't got to worry about investing, new coins, old coins, who cares? You're just going to make money as the market cap rises. And I mean, that's the promise, but we haven't had that yet. And until we do, I think that a lot of people are going to be prevented from being able to get into the investment opportunities that are crypto, because the chances are you're going to pick one out of 25,000 cryptos to do well with. God bless.
Yeah, that's 100% right. The promise of the ETF was that you wouldn't have to go through all the rigmarole and drama of buying, getting exposure to crypto directly yourself. What you could do is just buy a fund like you do your mutual fund or your retirement fund, and it would be included as one of the assets in that fund. That's the promise, right? What that would do for the market is it would exponentially move it up, right? Because now it would be included in an ETF like the way, like, I don't know, tech stocks are like FANG. But in order to have an ETF in the United States, you have to apply for it with the SEC. And what the SEC has done is kind of delay most of those applications. Again, I'm looking at Tiffany because she's at the firm. She'll know that she probably knows the dates off the top of her head. Delay them until whenever, which is hampering the market. And I believe Grayscale, Joel, it's Grayscale, I think, brought the case to try to force the SEC to actually make a call on whether or not registered investment advisors can include crypto, specifically Bitcoin, though, because it's a whole thing. But Bitcoin in an ETF, that's the challenge there.
Tiffany?
Yeah. I mean, so I agree that, I mean, the goal is to have diversified crypto product like you have for other types of funds. That is like way down the road, because like what the SEC is not letting go effective right now are just ETFs that would only have Bitcoin, right? So like part of like, and for all the reasons people have been like kind of alluding to, like the benefit of having an ETF with first step would be Bitcoin, would be allowing participation in your brokerage account, so that you don't have to go through the trouble of going to a crypto platform if you're not crypto native, et cetera. But the goal, and this is part of the reason why you hear the bad stories about crypto, is to get to a point of where you have a diversified crypto product. So when you hear stories about people losing a bunch of money, it's because unlike securities where you have accredited investors and all these suitability requirements, you can there's just access. And that's what we wanted. Everyone wants financial access, right? So everyone has the ability to invest in crypto, but there's no guardrails. There's no one saying that, like, even though the person down, your neighbor or someone on Instagram made like 10x when they put their life savings in, or even put a little bit of money, that you shouldn't do that. The whole principle of diversification is just not, that educational component is missing. So when we get to, like, we're now at the very beginning, but we get to like the real benefit of the ETF, we'll be able to have a diversified crypto product that will give you exposure to a bunch of different tokens, like we have the securities market. You invest in a fund, you get exposure to 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 different companies.
So we're in closing mode. I'd like to give you each maybe like 30 seconds to just give us any closing thoughts you have. Eduardo, 30 seconds.
Wow. I mean, basically, I'm Eduardo Jackson. I'll just keep it short because I really could go off on this. But I think that what I would like to impress upon people is that this lack of clarity is really chasing innovation out of this country. We're falling behind technologically, and this is the future.
Okay. Joel?
Fascinating. I think that unfortunately, crypto, when the Wild Wild West days with the ICOs, didn't regulate itself appropriately, didn't have a mechanism to regulate itself. Everyone was able to come to market with every bad idea, the best marketing, the best things, the best videos, and all in order to get the Ethereum or the Bitcoin out of your hand. And then you end up with their worthless token. And I think that legacy remains. And I think that that's something that scars a lot of people in crypto. And unfortunately, this is what we're getting if there weren't the losses and the crooks and the people that were really bad actors in the beginning. Probably they won't be looking at this with such a criminal lens, but people have made millions off of stealing from others using crypto. And that's something that's unfortunate and requires regulation.
Tiffany.
I'd say I think it's important for folks to remember just the underpinnings of crypto, decentralization, access for everyone, and just the technology and how it's innovative and disruptive. And it's important to keep those principles in mind and not let the bad actors and the bad stories get in the way. And it's important to educate people and become educated, especially with your policymakers, so we get to a point of actually recognizing like the true benefits of crypto and Web3, because I think there's real benefits, especially for people of color.
Rasan.
Yeah, I'll only echo what everyone else said. In particular, I would say for this audience is, again, regulation isn't of itself bad, and you aren't powerless, right? Go get educated, go know who your policymaker is, have an opinion, and make sure you vote so that you have a voice. If you don't do those things, you cannot complain, because people will take your power if you don't use your power. So you need to get out, you need to vote. You need to know what you're voting about. Don't just vote because somebody told you that way. And you need to educate yourself in the crypto market because, like everyone said, it's innovative, it's fast, and it's a self-regulated thing. So you better know what you're doing and be comfortable before you get involved. But if you do get involved, there's a bunch of benefits waiting for you.
All right. Some applause for this panel. Thank you so much. You've been listening to the Black Blockchain Summit. Stay tuned. Lots of great panels to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you.